Hello, good evening out there from my living room here in Berlin. I welcome you to the discussion on new ideas for German foreign policy, for a German foreign policy post Angela Merkel. I'm delighted that you've decided to spend your time with us tonight. I know there's a lot of competition out there, competing events, so I'm really glad that you decided to join us here. And I am even more delighted that I can basically introduce an excellent panel to you. Although I have to start with bad news here. One of the people that we invited, Siemtje Möller from the Social Democratic Party, she got vaccinated and she has huge side effects, and she's terribly sorry, and she sends her best, but she is unable to join this discussion, but for very good reasons. So that means that basically Germany is taking up speed when it comes to vaccinating its citizens. I'm pleased that the rest of the panel is still alive and kicking. And hopefully also soon vaccinated. I'll introduce you to them. I have Johann Wadephul with us, who is from the Christian Democratic Party and member of the German Parliament. Also a member of the German Parliament is Graf Lambsdorff from the FDP, from the Liberals. And I have Reinhard Butkofer with us, who is a member of the European Parliament for the European Greens. All of them well-known experts on foreign policy here in Germany, and all of them in the driving seat when it comes to also deciding kind of the future direction of the foreign policy approach within their parties. So with that, I maybe try to kick it off by presenting you with some data, because you don't know it, but tomorrow ECFR will launch two big reports. One of the reports is about German foreign policy. You might know that we do public polling for a while now, and we did a huge poll in April and May in 12 European countries on the effects of COVID. So 15 months after the COVID pandemic has hit Europe, how do Europeans perceive European cooperation, the activities on the European level, the performance of the EU institutions? And we also ask, how do Europeans see, basically not only themselves, but also the world around them? How do they see major partnerships? So stay tuned tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. Our reports will be available, but I'll give you a sneak preview because some of the data is really interesting and telling about Germany, and I want to discuss it with our speakers. So, for example, we asked one question on basically what do you make of the coronavirus crisis? Does it show the need for more cooperation on the EU level, or has it shown that EU integration has gone too far? We have asked this question already last year, but this year we see an 11% increase on those people who say that EU integration has gone too far. Now, 33% of Germans say EU integration has gone too far. The coronavirus crisis has proven this. And as I said, this is 11% plus and catapults the Germans on top of the kind of EU skeptic list. 47% though still think that the crisis shows a need for more cooperation. 55% of Germans think that the political system of the EU is broken. And in total, Germany reports the biggest drop in confidence in the EU since the start of the pandemic. 28% of Germans say they have much less confidence, 21% say they have slightly less confidence, and 19% say the crisis didn't make a huge difference, but they weren't very confident in the first place. So that in sum, this is over 60% of Germans, which are not very or not confident in the European Union. Well, in the report that you will read tomorrow, Mark Leonard and I argue that something is wrong. So we risk to lose basically the permissive consensus behind our approach towards the European Union and maybe foreign policy more broadly, Because also this is the last data I'll show you, but 59% of Germans said that Germany can only rely on itself and does not need help from the EU institutions or other European member states, the US, China, Russia, when it comes to how to get out of this crisis. And so 59% of Germans, this is number one in that camp, followed by the Austrians, where 34% said that they can only rely on themselves. So there's a huge gap. And the Germans obviously are not only self-confident, but also more skeptical about European cooperation. We don't want to make this entirely about the EU here. This is about foreign policy more broadly. But I wanted to basically share this information also with my panelists, because I want to ask them whether they think this is a warning signal and whether they think that also the foreign policy approach of Germany needs to change significantly once we have a new German government, because also the conditions for German foreign policy out there have changed tremendously with the great power competition between the US and China, with globalization and crisis, with the US focusing on the Indo-Pacific. So a lot of pressure on Germany from the inside and from the outside. And now I stop and give it to more interesting people, namely our panelists. And I have asked all three of them to kick us off with some first remarks and statements, basically answering the question, what has to change in German foreign and security policy, if anything has to change, and why? And what contribution can their party make to drive that change? What makes kind of their party's approach different or better than the other approaches? And I would start with Johann Wadephul, because he basically represents the leading coalition here and the biggest party we currently have in Germany, the CDU. And Mr. Wadephul, over to you after my lengthy introduction.
No, thank you very much for having us. Thank you for this initiative, Jana, to you and to your staff. It's really a good idea to discuss these issues at the very end of this period, and of course looking forward to the elections in September, with Chancellor Merkel leaving her office, and of course this will be a decisive turning point, especially for the Christian Democrats, but I would also say for Germany and perhaps also for Europe. But to start with the Christian Democrats, we are used to these turning points. We are the party of Konrad Adenauer. We are the party of Helmut Kohl, and we're the party of Angela Merkel. So we are used to have these chancellors and to start new, to have a new view, of course, on the challenges Germany and Europe is facing. And I see, and I would like to briefly name 5 of the most important challenges for Germany and for Europe. The first challenge is an old one. It's Russia. And I still think we have to be clear in this point. Russia, ever since the occupation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia in 2008, and since the unlawful annexation of Crimea, has been constantly and deliberately breaking international rules and international law. Most importantly, those rules itself have to design and to subscribe such as the Charter of Paris. And we continue to see this in the constant efforts to use hybrid methods of warfare in the eastern Ukraine in order to destabilize the Ukraine. The second thing are hybrid attacks. We can see that hybrid warfare, hybrid attacks on various European countries. Russia is very active in this field, but other actors are too. One well-known example is the so-called Tiergarten mord, the murder of Sergei Skripal, cyber attacks on the German government institutions, ministries, and also on our parliament, the German Bundestag. And they can clearly be traced back to Russia. In addition to that, that's really still new for us, fake news are being spread to undermine trust in democracy, international and national institutions. The third challenge is China, of course, the rise of China. And as the EU Commission has clearly stated, China is for us a partner, a competitor, and a systemic rival. And this is not only the position of the Commission, but also of the Christian Democrats and the EPP in the whole European Union. China is challenging the rule-based international order. It wants to create a new Sino-centric world order until 2049, and it's up to us not to underestimate their willingness to reach that goal. We must work together with value partners, democratic countries under the rule of law in Europe, in Asia, and elsewhere. And we have to convince other countries, there's still a lot to do, that our liberal and value-based system at the end caters better results to the people. This is really a challenge. The fourth is the transatlantic relations, and especially after the Biden administration now came into power, I think we have another 4 years, the very opportunity to come together, closer together, because we have to do, and there's a lot to do, I assume, for Germany and for Europe, both. Because, of course, also with the Biden administration, America, the United States, I do have an increasing focus on Asia. They see the Chinese challenge, and they very much have to concentrate on that. So it's not surprising that the Japanese Prime Minister Suga was the first foreign leader who met President Biden. It's not that we are jealous, but we have to see that, and we have to have that in mind. And of course, we have to assess what does that mean for our policy here in Europe. And the second development is the consequence of the first. We have to be aware that the US might be less present in Europe in the future. So what does that mean for us? So if one calls the Wales agreements outdated, as one of the candidates for the chancellor did in the last weeks, it's ironically true in one sense. The need, in our take, to invest in defense has even grown dramatically. The need to invest in defense has to be bigger. And I think if we look to Russia, if we look to China, if we look to these challenges, I think we need not 2, but perhaps likely 3% of our GDP. That would be in the interest of a new transatlantic relation, and to show the United States of America that we are really seeing these challenges and that we are willing to counter them. So I'm afraid many politicians in Germany, also in my party, still don't dare to be clear in this point. The world is changing and we have to do more. 30 years after the German reunification, it would take time for Germans to grow into this role in Europe, and we have to hurry. The world is not waiting for us. We Germans have to better train our strategic muscle to cooperate with our partners. We have to first define and then to communicate what our interests are. And I would just like to remind what the former Polish foreign minister, Mr. Sikorski, said: I fear German power less than German inaction. So many Germans still have to digest and fully understand that. And this is, I think, our responsibility. And this is what the Christian Democrats and also the CSU are working for. We have to be defining and explaining what lies in our interests, and we will never be able not to reach these interests and these goals without France, our closest partner here in Europe, and with Europe as a whole. So concentrating on national interests is not our future. We are a European-orientated party, as we have ever been since Konrad Adenauer, and we will be so and stay in this position also when Ms. Merkel will have left her office. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have 100 follow-up questions immediately, but I give the others the opportunity to lay out their visions, and then I think we need to maybe dive a bit deeper into some of the topics and discuss them further. Maybe for our listeners from outside Germany, I think the reference that Mr. Wadephul made to one of the candidates who was basically criticizing the 2% goal that was directed towards Annalena Baerbock, who in several occasions has questioned kind of the idea behind the 2% goal or the rationale. And maybe I take this to hand over to Reinhard Butkofer. Maybe you want to come back to that and pick that up. But of course, feel free in your introductory remarks to address whatever you want to. And then, as I said, we dive deeper into those discussions also later. Mr. Bütikofer.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, to ECFR for including me in this panel. If you allow me, Mrs. Puglierin, I would start with a remark or two on the polling that you have reported. I've looked at some of the numbers and I find them somewhat contradictory. And some of them also contradict another poll that has recently been published by Bertelsmann Foundation and the German Marshall Fund that creates a different picture of where Germany stands. But to pick up just one issue, when you said 59% of Germans believe that the national government helps against COVID and not the EU, this is just realism, because over the first year of the pandemic, the German government invested as much into saving the German economy as all the other countries of the EU combined had been able to invest to push back against the economic fallout from the pandemic. So I don't see that as an ideological bend of the German population against the EU. It just reflects the reality that the German national state is still very powerful, whereas the Portuguese or the Spanish or the Italians had been dependent to a high degree on the willingness and the ability of the European Union to move forward together. As regards the overall trajectory, and I will certainly pick up the point that Mr. Wadephul made, I would say that the main goal that we have to pursue is still the one that was formulated by Jean-Claude Juncker, the former president of the European Commission, who said we need Weltpolitikfähigkeit, the ability to engage in global politics. And I do not think that this is just a challenge for the government. We do need an all-of-government approach, but we also need an all-of-society approach. I think that there is the major transformation that we have to address. And I believe we cannot do that. We cannot move from what I consider a reactive foreign policy towards a proactive foreign policy unless we're willing to discuss what kind of vision we're willing to align with others. And I would say that vision must make sense for Germany, describing that it is in the national interest to pursue common European policy. It must make sense for the European Union and of course also for the global order. And I see 4 dimensions there. One has been identified by President Biden when he spoke of the upcoming summit for democracy. So democracy and rule of law, that is certainly one dimension of like-mindedness around which we should assemble cooperation. The second dimension is certainly a rules-based multilateralism. And I don't just say multilateralism because we hear from China a lot of talk about multilateralism, but when you listen more closely, it's just a nice paint on a policy of big power coercion. And the third is certainly the Green Front, the most notably the climate dimension, the necessary transformation, which of course has to be addressed in a combination of green and social and economic policies. And the fourth dimension is the issue of global justice and partnership. I believe that in order to get there, Germany, as well as Europe as a whole, must be willing to shoulder more responsibility. And that pertains to every dimension of foreign policy, including the security dimension. However, having said that, I'm still not convinced that the 2% goal is a worthy goal. And I would welcome Mr. Wadephul if you would go out campaigning for the 3% goal. I wish you the best of luck with that. Just to put it very simply, if my economy goes down the drain, I don't need less security. And if my economy thrives, that doesn't create an imperative for buying more tanks. So what we need to do is, and this is what I would offer as a rational perspective, we need to focus on the capabilities that we have to create and to measure our ambition against those capabilities. And maybe we will find time to go into that in the Q&A. I also believe that Germany's foreign policy has to get rid of one dogma that has been prevalent for so many years, namely the dogma that the economic and the security sphere could be completely separated. We had a foreign policy and we had an automotive foreign policy, and the second tended to predominate. We had a very interesting debate in Germany and in particular in the Bundestag over the last year or so with regard to the 5G issues, where for the first time ever, the national security people managed to battle the mercantilists, not just to a draw, but basically prevail in the end, also because some members from CDU did not support Mrs. Merkel's position, which I consider in that regard, and not only in that regard, as a position which is behind the curve. And I believe the necessity to understand the combination of economic and security rationale, that is something that Germany in particular has to learn. And we also need a set of flexible relationships.
I think we need to come to an end with the first introductory remarks in order to later have a discussion.
Then let me just make one more sentence. And I would hope that we can get back to that because Mr. Wadephul has also mentioned China. I was happy to hear what he said. because what he said signals that Merkel's position is already being phased out. And I think that is necessary. We need a new China policy. And if you ask me to describe it in one sentence, I would say do exactly the opposite of what the peace research institutions proposed in their new annual report this morning. Then you will have a good China policy.
Now we all first read the reports that ECFR will publish tomorrow morning, and then if there is time left, we can read the report you just talked about. Graf Lambsdorff, last but not least, a liberal view on German foreign policy. Maybe you can address, with your European background also, how worried you are about the rise in Euroscepticism in Germany, if there is one. And then, I'm looking forward to the debate already. As I said, I have many follow-up questions, but I encourage also our audience to come in and to send me questions via Q&A. I see that we have listeners from all over Europe, which I think is truly great. Graf Lambsdorff.
Well, thank you so much. I've been given 5 minutes to essentially restate the concepts and the underlying sort of tenets of German foreign policy. I'll try to do it in 5 short points. Rethink, renew, reorganize, reprioritize, and restart. Rethink. Let us challenge some of the assumptions that have been underlying German foreign policy. For example, the United States are always a reliable partner. No, after 4 years of Donald Trump, we must recognize that that is not the case. Right now, things are looking up, but it is, of course, something desirable, but it's not a given. Our products have universal market access everywhere. Reinhard Butkofer spoke of automotive foreign policy. Volkswagen sells 40% of its cars in China. That is crazy. That is an over-dependence on one market by one of the most important German companies that is just mind-boggling. Particularly when you see how China treats other countries at the cross lines of geopolitics and economic issues. Just look to Australia. Our risk exposure to China is far too great. And the third one is there such a thing as an international community? Or is that a pipe dream? We've heard decoupling as a word, as a term, over the last couple of years, and people were accusing the United States of engaging in that policy, particularly Trump. But the matter of fact is that China and Russia have been decoupling themselves from what we considered to be common standards, like international law, trade rules, or lately even air traffic security. It's when you think of the flight in Belarus. So we need to rethink some of our basic underlying assumptions. Number 2, renew the European Union together with the French. Johann Wadephul just said, well, the CDU, the Christian Democrats, are the party of Adenauer, of Kohl, and of Merkel. Well, there's a difference here. Adenauer and Kohl shaped the European Union. Chancellor Merkel managed crises of the European Union. There's a fundamental difference. The only programmatic, conceptual speech she ever gave exalted the intergovernmental method, but not the community method. So the Christian Democrats' European policy has changed under Merkel, and I'm extremely happy, let me say that the current leader of the CDU, Armin Laschet, with whom I served in the European Parliament, has a completely different view of European affairs than Chancellor Merkel. He has a European vision, and the thing that we all need to do is to keep our fingers crossed that Macron gets re-elected in the spring of 22. That gives us another chance. Merkel had no vision whatsoever. She was a crisis manager. That's it. She will not be considered a great European by historians. Reorganize. Now, foreign policy is very often has to deal with things that simply come up, and you have to deal with them. And the German foreign policy apparatus needs reorganization. We need a National Security Council. We need a quadrennial diplomacy, defense and development review. We need strategic thinking in our machinery, and we need a better machinery for what we have. For example, the Lisbon Treaty centralized European policy making on the fundamental, the treaty-based issues in the state chancelleries. However, formally, our foreign office is still in charge. We need to adapt our foreign policy apparatus to the foreign policy and the European realities of our age. That, for example, requires at the European level to move to qualified majority voting in common foreign and security policy. That is something that's also needed. Reprioritize. I think we have an opportunity with Joe Biden and the upcoming G7 summit, where he's going to present the B3W concept, the Build Back Better world, to move away from a sort of, too strongly mercantilistic foreign policy, as Reinhard Butkofer just rightly said, towards a policy that is more anchored in an alliance of democracies. And I mean, by that, I mean not a formal organization, but what I mean is the Atlantic and the Pacific dimensions of democratic nations centered around the hub of the United States under Joe Biden, containing China's detrimental influence in the sort of world order. Now, on to restart, so that was reprioritize. Let's prioritize the West and the cohesion of the West and the containment of China over purely economic considerations. However, and Jana Puglierin won't be surprised by that, this is the liberal voice speaking, I think we also need a restart of our economy. We need to conclude more trade agreements. We need to ratify the comprehensive agreement on trade with Canada that has been blocked for how should I say this diplomatically, disingenuous reasons in the German Bundestag. We need to recognize where our true interests lie, economically speaking. For example, we have twice as much economic exchange with Poland than we do with Russia. However, we have a chancellor who's advocating Nord Stream 2 for economic reasons. Whereas the Poles, the Balts, everybody is against Germany on Nord Stream 2. But we have this restart of our economy, I think, requires us to open up markets and to particularly focus on where our interests are, because we need to get GDP growing again. And then final point, after having said rethink, renew, reorganize, reprioritize, and restart, I'll make a full stop here just to add one element. The 3%, we have them in our electoral platform as German liberals. 3% for diplomacy, development, and defense. And I believe that would be, in keeping with our international responsibility. Right now, we spend significantly less than that. I believe it's time to change it. And so we're working for that goal. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you all for, I think, a great input and a lot to chew on. People in our audience have already reacted to this, and I tried to bring everything in here. Maybe we start with a question by Stephen Erlanger, because that is something kind of very self-centered that I'm thinking about a lot these days. So Stephen Erlanger from the New York Times asked, does Germany need to respond in some way to Biden's outreach, including his quiet acceptance of Nord Stream 2? One could, I think, bluntly say that the Americans have let us off the hook here. Or is the view that we Germans have done everything properly, so no need to respond or offer anything? Or is the government in such a do not disturb until September mode that no one even wants to answer? So Joe Biden, has let us off the hook when it comes to Nord Stream 2, at least officially. We don't know what's behind the scenes. He has kind of told us that he will send 500 soldiers more to Germany and not follow kind of the Trump approach. Outstretched hands all around, and a lot of fellow think tank colleagues have argued Germany, kind of nobody answers, no reaction. So question to all of you here is first, Stephen's question, do you think there is a price tag? Is there an expectation, especially when it comes to Nord Stream 2? And what would that be? What is the American expectation vis-a-vis Germany? And maybe second part of the question, so if you were in government, what would be kind of one major initiative with the United States that you would advocate for, that you would kind of offer the United States as something, let's do this together, because it's in our interest, it's in their interest. So is there a price tag to kind of the current charm offensive that we've seen? And what would be your prime initiative? I take volunteers. Who wants to come in first?
Well, maybe I can start because it's been in the news, so it's not a secret. Yes, there is a price tag. We just don't know what's on it. Lars-Henrik Röller, the National Economic Advisor, and Jan Hecker, the National Security Advisor from the Federal Chancellery, were in Washington, D.C. last week, and they negotiated exactly this. We just don't know what was sort of in their speaking notes and what the Americans asked in return for this very surprising yet welcome sanctions waiver. We will clearly have to expect a price to pay for this very unfortunate project, which I don't know, Schröder and Merkel and Schwesig are the last ones to believe that this is a private business undertaking. Everybody knows it's geopolitics. And Vladimir Putin said as much in St. Petersburg just last week. So yes, there's a price tag, and I think the most obvious part of the transatlantic agenda now is, of course, NATO. There will be a NATO summit. Germany cannot move to 2% quickly. I mean, the absorption capacity of the armed forces, given the slow processes that we have, are what they are. But we can contribute to joint assets in NATO. We can contribute to the enhanced forward presence in the Baltics and in Poland. We do some things there. And I'd be interested in what the Americans really asked of Hecker and Röller to define exactly what they would like. But final point is stabilizing Ukraine and helping Ukraine above and beyond what has been agreed so far. Would most likely, if I were sitting in the White House and the National Security Council and the Germans came after the Nord Stream blunder, I would ask Germany to take a particular responsibility for Ukraine.
Yeah, but that is all fine, but that's not the second part of my question. So you said what kind of the Americans you think expect, but the second part was what should we offer? So what would be Alexander Graf Lambsdorff's idea to present to the United States? Because what would be kind of the project you would like to work with most with the Americans?
Well, I think that if you look at the map of Europe, if you look at what we call the post-war peace order, the Nachkriegsfriedensordnung, it rests on a number of assumptions: inviolability of borders, respect for the non-violent arrangement of territorial conflicts, etc., etc. And in that regard, Ukraine is the keystone state. It's simply the one state. Once Ukraine has collapsed, the post-war order has changed forever. And therefore, I think making us pay for the transit fees that Ukraine no longer obtains from Russia. I mean, Putin was very clear in St. Petersburg. He said, if the Ukrainians want to have continued transit through their territory of gas, they will have to behave according to Moscow's wishes. That is what Putin publicly said in Petersburg. Now, that means that the Russians are ready to cut off the gas transit. And that means billions of euros lost to the Ukrainian state budget. It's not about the gas. We have reverse flow. We can send them the gas. But the euros are missing. And so I think the bill will come in contributions to Ukraine's budget, very simply and directly linking Nord Stream 2, the naivete of Merkel and Schröder. Well, with Schröder, it wasn't naivete. And that's, I suppose, what's going to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Johann Wadephul and then Bütikofer.
Thank you. I couldn't in this point I couldn't more disagree with Alexander Graf Lambsdorff, because look, if you look what is the main expectation from the United States on Germany for the future? It is, are we ready and are we willing to align our China policy with the United States? I think this is the very main point. And okay, Reinhard Butkofer said this is a new paradigm for the Christian Democrats. I don't think so, but okay, let's leave that aside. I think we as Germans, okay, we have different, of course, interests as the United States, as Europeans. But I think this is the main point, what Biden expects and what the United States expect from us. Are we ready to form, to have a common approach on China counter all these threats from China together with the United States. This would be my first and my very asset I would offer to the United States. And of course, the second one is to make this point very shortly. Of course, to do our job in conventionally be able to defend Europe. And of course, Germany has to contribute more. Let's not discuss about 2 or 3 or 5 or 4 or 1%. It is of course a question of capabilities, and we have to spend money for this. And the very question is, are the Greens ready to spend more money on defense as Germany is doing now? This is the very question you will have to answer, of course, in the campaign, but latest after the elections in September. And the third thing, only to say this, only 2 sentences, Jana, please. Nord Stream 2, of course, is only one supply line. We have several supply lines for gas from Russia to Europe, to Germany, to other countries. We have a lot of engagements from Europe, from the United States, if it comes to fossil powers in Russia. America has been buying huge amounts of heavy oil in the last years, since they were not be able to buy this in South America due to the situations there. So everybody who's rational in DC knows very exactly that there are a lot of links if it comes to fossil energy to Russia. And okay, we can use these links, we can cut them, we can condition, of course, the buying and the selling of these things. And Germany will be ready to be in the Western solidarity and the European solidarity, but not only this one supply line. If so, all supply lines. If so, also the engagement of Exxon and other companies in Russia.
Thank you very much. And now over to Mr. Bütikofer with his generous offer to the United States, a remark on the price tag, and maybe if you want also some remarks specifically on Nord Stream 2, because I know that this kind of is really a thorny issue for the Green Party and the European Greens.
No, it's not a thorny issue. We've been the most consistent opponent of that project, both on the German level and also on the European level. And I personally have been a leading opponent of that. And because of that, I've thought several times about what an off-ramp could be for the stubborn position of the German government. And frankly, I haven't found one. And I'm not sure that the lenient approach that Biden is presently offering the chancellor will lead to any satisfactory results. In the first place, Stephen, when you ask this, I think we should not forget that this is not bilateral German and American business. This is European business. This is business of the neighbors to our east. It's Ukrainian business, Polish business, Baltics business. And it's a mistake to just address the Germans and to ignore the willingness of everybody else to also be part of a satisfactory solution. Ambassador Ischinger recently, when he tried to promote an alternative and find an off-ramp, he said, let's negotiate with the Russians and the Americans and the Ukrainians and everybody else and the EU. That would be my approach. Secondly, I believe that Nord Stream 2 is a very, very big strategic mistake. There, I'm completely with Alexander Graf Lambsdorff. It's, so to speak, in theological terms, it's a sin against the Holy Spirit of EU solidarity. And I can't imagine that there would be an adequate price tag unless it would include additional guarantees for the security of Ukraine. because that is what is at stake. To say, okay, we do something that we have to do anyhow on China, we're less ignorant on China than the chancellor is at the moment. That's not an adequate answer to the challenge to European stability. Lambsdorff is right. This would be killing a very important perspective. It would be undermining a pillar of European stability. And by the way, I'm not even sure that Biden has full liberty to offer Germany whatever he wants to negotiate, because as far as I can see, there is very stiff opposition still on either side of the aisle in the Senate. And I would not say that the Biden team, even though Blinken wants to have Germany in his camp, I'm not sure that the Biden administration will be able to pull that off, seeing how small the maneuvering space is that they have. I think it would still be, and my offer to the Americans would be, let's kill Nord Stream 2. That would be my offer.
Okay, Stephen, I hope you've noted all of this. So maybe kind of scrolling through the chat, I see a number of questions on China by various people. And maybe I try to bring them in together and ask you. So there's Hans Hagmann who asks, which is most important for your three parties? And this gives me an opportunity for latecomers to say that we did not exclude the SPD. Siemtje Möller, of course, was on board. She got sick, or she had side effects because she got vaccinated. It was very short notice. We count the SPD into the next German government. This is kind of by no means on purpose, just to reassure you. But coming back to the questions on China. So, question is, what is most important to your parties? Is it decoupling from China? I mean, these are not my alternatives here. These are Hans's alternatives. Decoupling from China because of human rights, minorities, closeness to the United States, or, and he puts this as alternatives, getting China on board for climate, migration, if you want to work with China on global green standards, sustainability, Africa, etc. So decoupling versus cooperation with China. I don't know if this is an either or, but maybe you know better. Then another question by Michael Backfish, particularly to Mr. Bütikofer, but I ask everybody. So what are the threats or sanctions that we have as incentives in order to steer China? And this is something that I'm thinking about also very much so. Do we have leverage when it comes to China? So is China dependent in any way on us? Can we kind of use this better? How can we move China as Germany or as European Union? So what are our means? And there was another question that was directed to Mr. Wadephul specifically, and it's about the German frigate. It's about the Bayern that will be deployed in the Indo-Pacific. And here, Nina Mitsui Ikuma says that we are not coordinating with the UK and the Dutch carrier, and that that we don't stop, or that basically there was also a lot of reporting about this in the press, that we basically don't want to provoke the Chinese with this, and that we are very cautious. And she says, can I understand that Germany is not willing to join the US strategy of deterrence against China? So what is the intention behind sending this frigate, the Bayern? And I think, gosh, the chat is really huge by now, so I hope I have everything. And maybe because Mr. Bütikofer was late, the last to answer in the last round, maybe he has the floor now for the first intervention. And then there's one more question about car makers. German car makers' dependence on China is arguably one of the reasons why Merkel punted the human rights question for China. How can German policy coordinate with the rest of the EU to take a tougher stance on China, given the hefty leverage China has over Germany here? But I think this is closely related to the other questions. So consider this your China intervention in this debate. What do you want to say about China?
Okay, so let me start with a simple sentence. The alternative between decoupling from China or trying to get China on board, that's not real. I don't think that we should, or that anybody around Europe does pursue a decoupling strategy. But we should take note of the fact that China has started decoupling long before we knew the word. Look at the access of Western companies in the IT sector. Look at how many international treaties they just ignore at will. Look at their actions where they have territorial conflicts with at least 9 of their neighbors in Asia. China is developing a hegemonic ambition. They use different words. Xi Jinping says China moves to the center of the international stage. That's his way of expressing the willingness to develop a China-centric global order. And I'm not saying we should not cooperate with China, but we can only cooperate with China under the premise that China is indeed a rival with regard both to their internal order and the values that we propose, and is a rival also with regard to global governance. China is the antidote to the multilateral system. China is the strongest advocate of big power coercion against everybody else. So in that regard, we should inform our competition and our cooperation by taking the fundamental reality of rivalry into account and as a starting point. And the one politician around Europe that has never agreed to that is the Chancellor. She has always refused to use the term systemic rivalry. She has tried to undercut Europe's China policy for very narrow German national priorities. And I think Germany is at the moment under the leadership of this Chancellor. She is the stumbling block of more coherent European China policy. Interestingly, the business community is far ahead. Look at what the president of BDI, the German Federation of Industry, said just 1 or 2 days ago, that companies should pay attention to human rights. Look at what BDI wrote 2 years ago in their strategy paper. Look at what the engineering industry, VDMA, do, what the electrical industry do. So the German industry is much more realistic with regard to China. And one thing we should not allow people to drink the Kool-Aid of our dependency on China. Germany's exports to China are close to 8% of our overall exports. Australia's exports are 30%. Can we at least be as tough as the Australians are, please?
I give that question.
I believe that the Chinese are dependent on us. 40% of the high-tech products in their market are of European origin. What do you think why they want us, why they want to divide us from the US, why they want to drive a wedge? Because they know that if they can't access US technology and couldn't access European technology, then they would be in dire straits with their dual circulation strategy. So I don't think that we are dependent. Some companies are, and Lambsdorff again has been right. Volkswagen is too dependent. A couple of other big corporations are too dependent, and we have to help them moving away from that. But that's not the perspective for the German industry, nor for the German country.
Thank you, Mr. Bütikofer. And I think that answers also Mr. Backfish's question on our leverage, so dependency of China. There was a lot of criticism of Chancellor Merkel, of her business first approach. If I can kind of summarize this, what Reinhard Butkofer has just said, and I want to give Johann Wadephul the opportunity to give an answer to this and to react and to present his view. And after that, we come to Graf Lambsdorff.
Yes, thank you very much. But firstly, I would like to say that I fully share the analysis given by Mr. Bütikofer. on China, on the interests on the perspective of China, on their goals. I said this before in my introduction already, and we are fully in one line, and we have the same view on China. And I think most of the Western world has the same view on China. And of course, this is still my point. It's the most interesting point for the United States. How is our position towards China? Do we work together with the United States? Do we, if it comes to foreign policy, if it comes to the economy, are we ready to align with the United States? And we are, and the European Union should. And this, of course, was the main goal of the German presidency and of Chancellor Merkel in the last year, to keep Europe together, to keep the Union of the 27 together, and not to have other formats like the 17+1. If there was one person in Europe, in the European Union, to keep the EU united and not to allow China to divide us, it was Angela Merkel. But I think I don't have to defend her. She fully shares the view of the Commission that China is a partner, a competitor, and a systemic rival. And of course, this is always three things, three views, and three approaches we have to do in the same time. And of course, China is in some fields a very important partner. If we fight against climate change, quite important for the Greens, I assume. We have a very trustful partner in China. Of course, in a lot of economic fields, we have China as a competitor. And of course, it is a systemic rival. And what is the difference between China, multilateralism has already been mentioned, and the Western world? We are able to build alliances on common values, on common interests, on trust, not only on political or economical dependence. This is the very difference between China and the rest of the world, especially Europe and the United States, but also, of course, Japan, Canada, a lot of countries in Asia, Australia, and so on. So, and let us use this field where we are better than China is, but we still have to do this. I think this is quite important. And one measure, only one, not the only one, is of course to send this frigate to the Indo-Pacific. It's going to Australia, it's going to Asia, it's going to visit Japan, South Korea, and
going so to
on.
Shanghai, first of all.
Yes, of course, because it's a trias, Mr. Bütikofer. Our approach on China. You said no decoupling, so I agree, no decoupling. So, which sense does it make to have some military exercises there in this region? With no possibility to be stronger than the Chinese Marines Marine is. So let's be clear. This is of course a course this frigate will take to show that Germany stands very strict to the free and open Pacific, to the freedom of navigation. This is what we show. And the first visit is, of course, to all these other countries. And we do not accept these islands which China demands for itself. All these things we will never accept. But there's no problem for us to also reach a Chinese harbor. But in the end of the day, this brigade shows that we are active in that region, that we work together with our allies there, with our partners, and also with the United States of America. But still, it is, yes, of course.
We need to leave it at this. I'm not a professional TV moderator with kind of a clock and that I can time your minutes, but I try to keep somewhat of a balance here. Graf Lambsdorff, China, and also maybe if I can add, because I forgot, but that was also mentioned in the chat, and I think it's a good question for a liberal. So how much of an economic backlash are we ready to take if we cut ties a bit with China? Because, I mean, you emphasize the need for a strong, I mean, everybody here, I guess, would agree that we need a strong German economy, but for a liberal, I think this is an interesting question. So how much are we willing to pay as a price for having a tougher China policy?
I can be relatively brief because I agree with nearly everything that Reinhard Butkofer said. I'm not quite as harsh on the Chancellor when it comes to China, because there she really did have a balancing act to do between the interests of the German economy, the industrial world here, and our foreign policy. But to those experts who listen to us from countries other than Germany, if you want to read the one paper that really shook everybody in Berlin, look at the Federation of German Industries 2019 paper on China. It's a complete reversal of a course, if you want. And there's a consensus here between a conservative, a liberal, and a green that China, the very regime is something completely different from anything that we would like to associate ourselves with on the basis of values. And when the Commission says partner, competitor, and strategic rival, these three are not equal. A partner and a competitor, well, we can say that about the United States. We can say that about Australia. We can say, you know, many countries are partners and competitors at the same time. But a systemic rival means we recognize the communist dictatorship in Beijing. We recognize the daily grave violations of human rights occurring in China, not as an accident, but as a consequence of the nature of the regime. And that is what sets China apart from the United States, and which is why I think any kind of debate about equidistance, etc., cannot be sustained against the value system that we have as a liberal democracy in Germany. It's very simple as that. But for those who come to this German debate on China, look at this BDI paper. Number 3, let me say the backlash. I'm totally against, a rapid decoupling. I wouldn't ask Volkswagen to stop selling cars in China. BMW sells a quarter there, so they are dependent on that market as well. But strategically, and that's what the BDI also wrote, the Federation of German Industries. Strategically, we stand at the cusp of a Cold War between the United States and China, and so strategically, risk diversification is going to be necessary if you want to survive as a company. If you put all your eggs into the Chinese basket and there's a serious deterioration in American-Chinese relations, we as Europeans will be asked, which side do you take? And it's not me who says this, it's the National Intelligence Council of the United States. Global Trends 2040, the report they just issued, said very clearly, our allies will be faced with starker choices in the years to come. And so you can see a broad consensus, slight nuances on the role of Merkel here, but I'm more with Johann Wadephul on that one than with Reinhard Butkofer. But the underlying analysis is the same. Final, very short point. The Chinese seat at the European table is not through Berlin, it's through Budapest. Hungary has turned into a puppet of the Chinese Communist Party, which is really ironic if one considers that Viktor Orban made his imprint on history by fighting communism. He is now China's spokesman in Brussels. It's a very sad development.
Thank you very much. There are questions on the concept, on the kind of partner, competitor, rival concept in the chat, comments, and a question whether that can be applied to any other country out there and whether the concept is meaningless. But I think we need to leave the China debate here because there are other issues I want to address, and we have only 25 minutes left. So I think we need to speed up and take a little less time than we had for the United States and China, for the European Union. There are several questions in the chat, but I mean, one of the big questions after Angela Merkel is gone is about German power in Europe. Angela Merkel was a strong personality. She has been around forever. She has every telephone number. And it's not only the sheer size of Germany, it's also her personally who really kind of tied things together for the better or the worse. We can discuss the status quo orientation. However, she will leave a void. So my question to you is, who will fill that void? Is it the next German chancellor? Is it President Macron in an alliance with Draghi maybe? And in that developing Franco-German tandem that I think Graf Lambsdorff also mentioned, and I think all of you mentioned it. So close cooperation with France. How is that developing in the European Union? Where is the balance? Is Macron leading and we are following? Do we come up, or do we need to come up with more European initiatives? And also there was one question in the chat about the role of Warsaw, so the Weimar Triangle. Is it all about the Franco-German tandem? What about the Central and Eastern Europeans, and particularly Poland? And let's make this a short round on Europe, the future of Europe, and European partners for Germany. So what is your position on that? And maybe I start with Graf Lambsdorff because you were last in the last round.
I'd say something nice about the parties of my co-discussants here. I already said something about Armin Laschet. He's a convinced European. He is going to hit the ground running once he's in the Chancellery. And Annalena Baerbock, the lead candidate of the Greens, also spent some time working in the European Parliament, so also has a European feeling. That's something that Angela Merkel never had. She developed that over time, but it's a bit of a different thing whether you come from Aachen, as Laschet does, or from the Uckermark, as Merkel does. That's number one. Number two, the void is going to be filled if Macron gets re-elected by a close cooperation of Laschet, Macron. I hope that he wins the election. Jesus, let's imagine for a moment what happens if Marine Le Pen ends up on top. We should count our blessings with Macron. But I think the longest serving prime minister is going to be Mark Rutte. And the Netherlands have traditionally punched above their weight. And with Rutte as a very strong sort of representative of the northern frugal approach, and Mario Draghi as the former ECB president in the south in Rome, Macron, Laschet, Rutte, Draghi. I think that is the sort of the people that who I see, you know, giving impulses. The Spaniards are very convinced Europeans and are going to be helpful. I think with Poland, I regret to say that with the current government, I'm a bit pessimistic on a significant impact on European developments, except in the negative. And maybe on CFSP, on security issues, Polish initiatives are to be expected. But beyond that, I don't see much coming from there.
Thank you. Thank you for being so brief, because this gives us more time for other topics. Reinhard Butkofer.
I am a bit skeptical regarding the perspective of a strongly renewed Franco-German axis. I think the EU 27 cannot be run by Paris and Berlin in tandem alone. We need a more multifaceted leadership, and Lambsdorff already spoke about that. I would go to the improbable statement of saying we must also include the Polish. We have, besides France and Germany, we have the frugals, we have the Southerners, we have the East. Weimar could offer a good format. It was rejected first by the French, then by the Polish, then the other way around, then we lost interest. We can vitalize that, we should. But of course, we cannot expect Poland, and I think I know a little bit about how terrible that government is, but we cannot expect Poland to play ball with us if we hit them in the face with Nord Stream 2. We cannot expect solidarity from them if we ignore their national interest in that case. So I would emphasize that we should be more inclusive. For the short term, nobody from the German side, regardless of who the chancellor will be, Laschet or Baerbock or even Scholz, nobody can fill the shoes of Merkel instantly, but Germany as a leading player around Europe will have its weight, and Germany should see to it, in the best tradition of Helmut Kohl, that it always plays with everybody and not just a selected few.
My dear colleague Milan Nitsch from DGAP reminds everybody that the longest serving prime minister after Merkel in the EU is Viktor Orban and not Mark Rutte. Just for the record, I'm not the fact checker here, but I thought that spices up the discussion a bit. Johann Wadephul, the CDU vision on Germany and Europe post Merkel.
Yeah, I can first thank Reinhard Butkofer and of course for his last words. Who is the best to follow Helmut Kohl? Of course, Armin Laschet. That's quite easy, and it's Alexander Graf Lambsdorff also explained the background of Laschet, and of course he is very orientated to the European Union. He has served in the European Parliament with these two great colleagues together. And of course, he grew up in Aachen, and he has a very close contact already to Mr. Macron. So, of course, he's not able to fill the shoes of Ms. Merkel, but at once. But of course, he's really able and he's willing to work very closely together with France, not in the way that only this tandem, only that these two countries, of course, lead also the European Union. But I think still the European Union needs two countries to bring all the others together. It's not only the difference between the North and the South, as was described by my two colleagues, but let's have a sober view to the East. This is one of the really risks I see for the European Union, that there is no willingness, absolutely zero willingness, not only in Hungary, to accept any migration to the European Union and to form a common policy on that field. So that will be very complicated for the forthcoming time, to find here some agreement between the member states, and to find a compromise between, of course, the need of migration and of course the pressure we do have from the south, and of course not the capability to accept all these people who are willing and heading for Europe and willing to come here. So this is a very, very complicated thing for the next time. And of course, if possible, in the Weimar Triangle, we could work together. But for now, I don't see any readiness in Warsaw, to be very honest. So for the next time, I expect that Germany and France have closely work together, and we have not only to do this in word but also in deed. And this point, I really have to mention. We are engaged in Africa and the Sahel zone, in Mali and in other countries. And France expects us to be there and to be engaged, also militarily. And this, Reinhard Butkofer, is still a proof for the Greens, as they did not agree to the last mandates of the Bundeswehr in that region. And this will not be possible in the future. If Ms. Baerbock becomes chancellor or foreign minister or something else in the government, of course, France will expect from every German government to stand side by side in fighting for the stability of this region, fighting against extremists. And this is also a need for military power in that region. Not the only mean we have to take, but a necessary one. And this is still an answer you will have to give.
Allow me, please, to make one rebuttal, because Mr. Wadephul has now several times tried to criticize what my colleagues are doing in the Bundestag. I want to just mention that we have voted in favor of MINUSMA, and we have not voted against, but we have abstained on EUTM because we thought that this should be reframed and more closely interconnected with political and civil perspectives. So the willingness to bear responsibility does exist. You shouldn't create a different impression, but I'm grateful, Mr. Wadephul, that you acknowledged that there's a chance that Annalena Baerbock might be the chancellor. That is indeed.
Yeah, but in fact, abstention is a no. Yeah, abstention is a no.
We can cut this discussion here, because I think for both your parties and the FDP, a challenge with the French is to cope with their new preference for coalitions of the willing outside the EU and NATO. I think this is the challenge that all of you will have to deal with. Kind of how to answer if France wants to launch another Strait of Hormuz European but not EU mission. What's our answer next time? But so I want to ask you, because we officially are 1 minute over time, because my team just reminded me that we agreed on 7:15 and not 7:30, which I dreamt of. So do you have 5 minutes more, or is this not possible? Then we close it here. Yeah. So and maybe the alternative is Russia. So it's either we spend some minutes on Russia or we close it here. I don't know what you prefer.
It's fine.
Is there? I don't want to. Yeah.
Let's forget Russia for, this time. We probably would all agree on Russia, with the exception of Nord Stream 2, but maybe around.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. I need to end it here, unfortunately, and I know that you were very busy last week's before summer break, and we are all looking forward to this. So thank you very much. There are still a lot of questions in the chat. We haven't talked about strategic autonomy. We haven't talked about the Middle East. We haven't talked much about Russia in the introductory remarks. There was something on Russia. But I think everybody who listened got a better impression, what's happening in Germany right now, what's the debate on foreign policy, where do the parties stand? And I thank my panelists very much so for their willingness to contribute and to share their insights. This is just the beginning. I mean, the election is only in September, and I think there's a lot of discussion needed, and we will continue to do this. And a little advertisement here, please read our reports tomorrow morning, look at our data. It's very interesting, of course, and we have made the best of it. So yes, exactly. So a wonderful evening to all of you, and thank you very much for sharing your insights with a pan-European audience. Bye.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.